First of all, I wish everybody a happy and healthy new year. And thank you very much to Rabbi Zabib and Aviva, you can hear me great, for inviting me back. And when I spoke to Aviva, and this is some time ago, and I can't believe it's like crept up already, she said she wanted to speak about rejoicing at the imminent arrival of a new annual cycle of reading the Torah. Now, my natural inclination is more of an Ashkenaz pronunciation, so I'm going to keep with my natural inclination, and I hope you'll be able to follow. I think it will be okay. And I'll point out, I won't be looking at the Hebrew, but it's basically, if anybody is more familiar with the Hebrew and it's like helpful for them in any way, by all means, you can look at it. And please, you can interrupt me and you can ask me and you can disagree with me. That's okay. That's fine. And whatever your thoughts and opinions are equally, they're valid, and I'm happy to hear anybody's contribution. So we're about to go into Shabbat, but we're focusing on next week because on Monday night, Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to be celebrating Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah. And it's very interesting because they fall out always the same 2 days of the week as Rosh Hashanah does. So especially in Israel, they only have 1 day, but in England, whatever day Rosh Hashanah falls out is the same day of the week that Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeret fall out. And the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, who lived in the Soviet Union, he moved to Poland. His name was Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, and he eventually moved in the 1940s to America. He says, what we cannot accomplish over Rosh Hashanah with tears and prayers, we can accomplish with joy on Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeret. So that's quite amazing because the whole crescendo, the whole year builds up towards Rosh Hashanah, and we're asking God to forgive us and that everything should be good for us in the year. And we have this idea that they always fall on the same day of the week as Rosh Hashanah. So there should be an idea that we should be able to accomplish something. We should get to a very high level of joy. And in fact, in Devarim, Deuteronomy, which is source 1 on your sheets, we are told, now this part I'll say in Hebrew because it'll be familiar to some people from our prayers, V'samachta b'chagecha v'hayisa ach sameach. Specifically talking about Sukkot and Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeret, we are told, you shall rejoice in or on your festival, and you shall have nothing but joy. So that's really interesting. This is supposed to be a time of joy. What do we do? What makes it so joyous? What are we so happy about? And we say in the Amida prayer in Mussaf, and also in all the prayers of the Amida on Yom Tov, that we say, Hashem, Lord, our God, give us the festivals and make us have this joyous day of Sukkot. It should be Chag Sukkot Hazeh, this joyous day of Sukkot, Zaman Simchosenu, the time of our gladness, our joy. And we also say, Yom Shmini Chag Hatzeres Hazeh, Zman Simchosenu. We don't say that for Pesach, it's Zaman Cherosenu, and the time of our freedom. And for Shavuos, we say Zaman Matan Torasenu, the time where we got the Torah. Why are we so excited? What are we so happy about? Like, we're going to always be happy. That's great. All good. Hopefully, by the time it comes to Sukkot, we don't always get this fantastic weather, but hopefully we have been through the process of Elul and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we are now in a position where we feel a bit of comfort. Like when you've gone through a process and you feel like if someone's God forbid been in hospital and they feel like, I feel I'm over the worst of it, I'm in the recovery stage. So hopefully we're all feeling like, yeah, the prayers went well, even if unfortunately Rabbi Zabib wasn't able to be there, but we're feeling like a bit of relief, like things are going well and it's okay for us. In Bible times and fitting in with the time of the harvest, Sukkot would be the time, it's also known in Hebrew as Chag HaAsif, the time where people gathered in their produce. Now it's difficult. I don't know if any of you have got a connection with farming, but I certainly don't. So it's difficult for us to think about life in relation to the calendar of agriculture. But at this time of the year would be the end, like people would harvest all their fruits. And if you were a farmer, you would collect in your your harvest, and you would see your physical prosperity. So that could be one of the other reasons why perhaps people were very happy, because they could see, wow, I was blessed this year with rain and all my crops went well and I wasn't exposed to drought. So that's all great. So those are some ideas about what we should be so happy about on Sukkot. There are other ideas, but we're going to move on and talk more about Simchas Torah and about rejoicing with the Torah. So what are we supposed to do on Sukkot to enhance our joy? So Maimonides, the Rambam, has written a book, a 14-volume book called Mishneh Torah. Please unmute yourself if you want to say anything. I just had to mute them, so otherwise they have some sort of background noise. The Rambam, in his book, he's written a 14-volume set. He was pretty much the first person who codified the Torah laws into subjects, because the Torah isn't subject driven, and nor is the Gemara for that matter. So the Rambam codified it, and he's got a section called things you do on Yom Tov. And so I think you're going to like this. It's source 3 on your sheet. What are we supposed to do to make ourselves feel happy on Yom Tov? So the Rambam tells us that for women, they should buy new clothes, or actually it says their husbands should get them new clothes and beautiful jewellery according to their means. So I don't want to cause any domestic harmony issues here, but I can only quote you what the Rambam says. He says that's what you have to do. You have to buy beautiful jewellery and clothes according to their means. Just think every time there's a festival, that's what the Rambam says. I didn't make it up. And the men are supposed to eat meat and drink wine. So I don't want to cause any problems because of that either. But of course, that is a sign. So the Rambam tells us that people enjoy themselves. Women like new clothes and beautiful jewelry, and men like wine and meat. The way to a man's heart is through their stomach. And there are other places which say what we should do for children, and perhaps we should give them nuts and sweets. I don't know if today, even if you think to yourself, when I was 10 years old, if I got a bag of sweets, I was really happy. My dad told me one year for Afikomen on Pesach, I asked for an orange or a slide. And I'm thinking, really? I thought an orange and a slide was like equivalent. I don't know. But today, I think kids would want something like the newest technology. I don't know, like maybe an iPhone. I don't even know what the latest one is. I don't know. It's not an actual commandment. It's not prescriptive. Everybody their guidelines, it's not an imperative. So anyone who's like, maybe I don't like new clothes. One of my children only likes having recycled clothes because she's very into the environment. So it's not, you don't have to, but that's an idea of understanding a bit of human nature, what things people would want, perhaps potentially, if they had what gives them joy. And in Hebrew, simcha perhaps is a word for joy or gladness or something like that. And the word Simchas Torah is the same word. We will on Wednesday have Simchas Torah, and we will be rejoicing with the Torah. So why is the last day of this festival marathon, starting with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, why is it called Simchas Torah, and what do we do on Simchas Torah specifically? And for that, you can look at source 4 on the sheet. And this is something that's written by a man whose name was, he's known as the Ramah. His name was Rav Moshe Isserles, where his Hebrew name starts with an Aleph. So that's why his name stands for Rabbi Moshe Isserles, but with an A. So his name's Ramah. And he was a Polish Ashkenaz rabbi. And he was at the same time as Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote his magnum opus, the Bet Yosef, which later got condensed into being the Shulchan Aruch. He was busy writing his own sort of halachic guidance at that time. And someone gave him this beautiful present of the book that the Rav Yosef Karo was writing. And then he's like, oh no, someone's pinned me to the post. This is terrible. And then he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to write whatever the rabbi who's a Sephardi rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote in the Shulchan Aruch. I'm just going to write some little glosses to just add to what he's already written. So this is what the Ramah says. This is the Ashkenaz rabbi says, why we call Simchas Torah Simchas Torah. So he's speaking about the end of the Festival of Succot, and he says the last day is source 4 on your sheet. The last day is called Simchat Torah, Simchas Torah, because simcha means rejoicing, gladdening, and we rejoice on it. We make a festive meal in honor of finishing the Torah, because what we're going to do in the synagogue, we're going to read the end of the Torah, Devarim, and then we're going to start Bereshis. So we're so happy we finished, and we're going to start again. And he says it's customary in these countries. He's talking about in the Ashkenaz minyan, the Ashkenaz ideas, for example, in Poland and the Russian countries, not necessarily the Spanish, those sort of countries, but this is what the custom is in the Ashkenaz countries, to take out all of the Torah scrolls, all the Sifrei Torah, out of the ark, out of the Aron HaKodesh on Simchas Torah in the night and in the morning, and to sing songs and praises. Every place should follow its custom. It's also the custom to circle the synagogue's bima. I'm sure you've got that in Northwood, I don't know how it's working now because of COVID, to circle the synagogue's bima with the Torah scrolls, and just like we circle the bima with the lulav. And this is lulav and estrog when we go around, for example, now already on Sukkot. I don't know what you're doing in shul now, obviously, because things are not quite exactly, because this wasn't at the time of a national crisis. So I'm not sure what's happening in your shul. And the Ramah says this is all done out of joy. So we see dancing with the Torah, according to the Ramah, is done out of joy. And it's supposed to be a very joyous occasion. And when there's a lot of people and we're allowed to sort of be a little bit more with each other and get into the spirit, then hopefully the kids will be able to come, and there can be sweets given out, and there can be a party atmosphere with flags. I know that in our synagogue, many times we had like an annual lunch, and everybody stayed, and there was, the people who were honored as the honorees, and the Chassan Torah and the Chassan Bereshis. It was really nice. Everyone got a chance to chat and everything. What I found fascinating is an article. It was actually printed in the Jewish Chronicle a few years ago, and it's actually from the diary of Samuel Pepys. I'm sure people are familiar. He passed away in early 1700s, and he was an English author and a politician. And I'll leave you to read what he said in your own time afterwards. But basically, he thought, what on earth is going on? He went to a synagogue in the East End of London, and he could see they were all singing in Hebrew, and he saw people were carrying the Torah, and he realized they were very heavy, but people were very, very happy and honored to be the people carrying the Torah. They didn't want to give it up, and he could see them dancing and singing, and he thought, how on earth is this a way of expressing religion? It's hard to imagine what someone from outside would see looking, he could see disorder, laughing, and it wasn't like the seriousness that he imagined would be in a prayer hall in a Jewish environment, in a prayer hall. So I'd like to talk a bit about what we do on Simchas Torah and some of the symbolism behind it, and how that's supposed to make us feel, and what we can learn or what we can integrate in our own life about what we do on Simchas Torah. So the first thing I'd like to address is about dancing in a circle. So now I'm up to page 2 on the sheet, and it just says dance in a circle. So if you want to try and remember what I said, dancing in a circle. So this is quite interesting, and we do it. Why do we do that specifically? And why does the Ramah says that's something we're supposed to do on Simchas Torah? So there is an idea, it's not on your sheet. The Gemara in Tanis 31a says that in the future, we're assuming this is like in the Messianic era, at the end of days, the Holy One, God, will arrange a dance of the righteous people, and he will be sitting amongst them in the Garden of Eden. So we have this image of a circle. So Rabbeinu Bachai, who's a medieval commentator, understands the circle of dancing as symbolizing something. A circle has no end. Like triangles have got corners, well, not corners exactly, but a square's got corners. A circle has no end. So we hope that through dancing in a circle, the abundance of goodness that we'll become infinite, will have no end. And the joy of the Torah and interacting with people and being part of the community should be infinitely full of blessing. The circle doesn't have a place where it starts, and it's not linear. It doesn't have a place where it starts and where it ends. There's no hierarchy. Everyone has their place in the circle, and there's no beginning and there's no end. So on Simchas Torah, we should all feel like we're all part of it. Everyone can join in. And in fact, the Vilna Gaon, who passed away in 1797, also an Ashkenaz rabbi. He lived in Vilnius, Poland, that area now. He says that a circle, if someone's standing in the middle of a circle, if they are, I forgot what the word is now, the middle of a circle, the radius comes out from that. Every single person, if you're standing in a perfect circle from the middle point, everybody is equidistant. So if we see the bima, or maybe the Sefer Torah is like in the middle, and our spirituality is in the middle, we are all equidistant from the spiritual center. In fact, Maimonides, if you like what he said before about the buying new clothes and drinking meat and drinking wine, he says, when he talks about studying the Torah, that every man is obligated to study Torah, whether they are rich, whether they are poor, whether they are physically healthy or ill, or whether they be full of vigor, full of the vigor of youth, or of great age, or weakened vitality. Now, why do I bring this in? Because although we have a responsibility to learn things about Judaism and to learn and to study the Torah, it's very unusual that we are dancing with the Torah where the Torah scroll is closed. When we take the Torah out the ark, usually the first thing we do is we read from it. We open it up and we read from it. Whereas on Simchas Torah, we're going to first dance with it and then we read from it. So it's very, very unusual. So I heard this most beautiful idea, and that the Torah scroll is closed, like in the little picture that I've got on the cartoon there, because on Simchas Torah, we are all, like we're all in a circle, we are all equally having access to Torah. Whether or not you are a tremendous scholar and you're very well versed with the words of the Torah, or if you're a person who hasn't had a lot of opportunity, or perhaps someone who can't even read Hebrew, that's okay. We all have a share in learning, in dancing with the Torah. The Torah's closed. It's not, there's no symbolism of who knows more or who knows less. Nobody's going to read it. You're just holding it. It's our possession. Hold it close to you. Look after it. Safeguard it. It's ours. When we dance, we don't dance with our heads. We dance with our feet. It doesn't matter your brain capacity. We're all in it together and we're all part of it. Think about the image of the circle being equidistant and infinite. There's no point where it starts and no point where it ends. We're all in it together. Okay, I'm just going to break there if anybody wants to say anything or ask me anything, and then I'll carry on.
If you can see on the chat, I think they're asking some questions.
Oh, sorry. New for you rather than new. What is that? Can you?
No, that's just a comment. But I mean, you see, the last one has a question. Why do we have round challahs on Yom Tov? Is it the same idea about the round, about the circle?
I'm not sure. Let me think about that. There is an idea to have round challahs on Yom Tov. And maybe it's to do with the cycle of life, because we have a cycle of life. I know, for example, there is an idea that when it comes to mourning, we're supposed to have eggs. So that's supposed to be with, like, although people are going through a hard time, we're moving into I'm going to write that down, and I'm going to try and find out, and I'll get back to Rabbi Zaviv with an answer. Maybe Rabbi Zaviv knows an answer, or maybe someone, a person who asked a question, Karen. Yeah, do you have an answer?
No, I just wondered, because you were talking about the round and the circle and life going round. I wondered if that was the reason why for the round.
I don't know, but I know that it's very traditional to have round ones on the festivals. I actually think, I'm just talking off the top of my head, so I never really thought about it before, is Rabbi Vasiliev, isn't it correct that when we say Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, that on Shabbos is every 7 days that Hashem sanctified the seventh day, and when it comes to the festivals, it is up to us,
beautiful,
not us,
beautiful,
because the calendar is fixed. But actually, in antiquity, what happened was there used to be two witnesses who used to go out and see the moon. We're going to talk about the moon a little bit later, so it ties in very nicely with my talk. That they used to send out, so to speak, they send out people to watch the moon. And when they went to the Beth Din and they said to the Beth Din, we've seen the moon like this and like this and like this. And then the Beth Din declared, right, today is the new month. It wasn't fixed. We've got a fixed calendar now, so it's hard to imagine that's how it was before. So when we have our prayers, we say, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. We sanctify the festivals and the time of the year. The cyclical time of the year is basically the Jewish calendar works around the moon, but there is a cycle. So, for example, we have to have sometimes an extra month to catch up the springtime. But really, it's the festivals are appointed. We know what the time's supposed to be, but they are appointed, so to speak, semi-man-made. I don't know if you can understand exactly what I'm saying. I'd like to research it further. That's just my idea. Now, and yes, you're quite right. It was in Crete Church Lane in the city of London. Yes, so if anybody's interested, I think it's fascinating that we do have an account from Samuel Pepys about what it was like, even in England. It's a long time ago to have had a story about what it was like to see in Simchas Torah and what it was even like in those times. Okay, does anybody else want to say anything? No? Okay, so I just wanted to mention, because I said before that everybody is supposed to have a share in learning Torah, that the son of the Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, who was known as the Rav, who was like the head of the Yeshiva University of Philosophy, he has a son whose name was Chaim Soloveitchik, who was born in 1937. And he went more, instead of rabbinics, although he's a tremendous scholar, he went more into, like, he was a professor in university, he taught in Hebrew U and in Yeshiva University, and he wrote a very famous essay called Rupture and Reconstruction, and he spoke about the transformation of contemporary orthodoxy. And he argues in his essay, I'm sure you can read it if you want, I've given you the reference for it, that Judaism is a way of life. So not only do we have to learn Torah, it's not always the way to learn, we don't always have to take a book and study it, but Judaism can be learned, doesn't always have to be learned, but it can be absorbed. Its tradition is mimetic, imbibed from parents, friends, and patterned on conduct regularly observed in home and in the street and the synagogue and the school. So what he's basically saying is, if you are able to, and if you've got access to the Holy Scriptures and you can read Hebrew, that is fantastic. If not, come to shul, learn things, come to classes like this, learn things. You can really get to know things about Torah and learn new things. And you're all here today, so that's all fantastic. And even though Judaism can be learned from other places like school and shul and friends and parents, we can learn things where we watch our parents do certain things. On Simchas Torah, we're actually celebrating the actual Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And the Chatan Torah, the Chatan Torah, gets up and makes the last blessing on the Torah at the end of Deuteronomy, the end of the book of Devarim. And the Chatan Bereshit, the Chatan Bereshit, gets called up and we finish the Torah, and then we straight away start a new book, there's no such thing as an end. We always carry on. There's never ending, okay? When someone learns a chapter of the canon of the Bible or a Mishneh or the Talmud, it's traditional to make a siyum, a special party. And we say a special prayer referred to as the Hadran, okay? That's what it's called. I don't know if anybody's ever been to one, but it's very moving. And when we finish learning a chapter, a book, or a subject, it's our fervent hope as we end one subject that we will continue by starting a new subject or a new book and to continue our studies. Thus, we are constantly engaged in the process of education. Judaism views learning as an unfinished product. Although we achieve many goals, and those are very important, we're constantly engaged in a process of lifelong learning. And we ask God for his help to start and finish other books. And these are just the words. I find this so moving. The words of the Hadran, some of the words are, we say, the same way as you, God, helped me complete this and this, X, Y, and Z, this book, this chapter, this Gemara, so too, please help me start this, that, and the other, start other books and complete them. So that is it. Like when one thing draws to a close, we're automatically opening the next door. We're going from one thing is like coming to an end and the new one is beginning. And I spoke a little bit before about the moon, because we were talking about round colors, which I'm going to get back to you about that. The moon is so interesting that we base our Hebrew calendar around the moon. And the unique feature of the moon is that it appears to us down here on earth, waxing and waning. It looks like it completely disappears, only to grow, then diminish, and then grow again. And our calendar is based around the moon. The festivals come around every year. The earth moves around the sun. We've got a cycle going. But we hope that every year we're in a circle, but we're also in a spiral. We hope every year we're building on what we did before, on our experiences that we've been through this past year, and anything perhaps that we've learned. And we hope that every year we're moving up a level, we're moving up a stage. But we nevertheless, as Jews, we mark our calendar according to the months. The moon is the determining factor in setting up our calendar instead of the sun. The sun is a symbol of unchanging. It rises in the east, it sets in the west, day in, day out. It's reliable, it's predictable. However, the moon changes, and it comes and it goes. It's small, it diminishes, and then it disappears. But then when it's completely dark, when there's a night where there's no moon, suddenly we have a moon again, and it starts growing and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And perhaps one of the lessons about using the moon and about Simchas Torah is that when things look dark and things are not great, we have to think to ourselves, there is always hope. And at the time of Simchas Torah, we have to think to ourselves, if we're going through a difficult time and we're getting to a dark place and it's hard for us, and I still think Corona is pretty bad, things are moving forward. We have to think to ourselves, we've got the power of renewal. We've got the moon is a never-ending reminder that we can renew. If things are on a downturn, there's going to be an upturn. The sun is much more like repetitive, predictable, every day, rising. Not that we see the sun so much here, we can't complain, but at the moment, can't complain. The sun is a bit like regular routine. We have to keep ourselves in our studies and in our commitment to Judaism and coming to shul, and keep ourselves fresh and excited like the moon, like the new moon. In Hebrew, the word for a year is shana. And the word shana, leshanot is to repeat, to go over, okay? Whereas the word for chodesh, which is like the new moon, each month is chodesh, comes from the Hebrew root, like we say chadesh, hit chadesh, and any words like that with the same words of chadesh means like to renew. And perhaps that's one of the things when we think about Simchas Torah, it's run on the moon cycle. And we should think to ourselves the same way as we close one part of the Torah and we open the new part of the Torah, the moon waxes and wanes. And sometimes we're going through a bad patch, but you can bounce back. We have to think to ourselves, we have to incorporate in our lives this excitement. In Hebrew, there's a word, hischadshus, or hischadshut, like excitement, vitality, renewal. And that brings joy to think to ourselves, if we're going through a difficult time, we're going to turn the page. We're going to turn the page. We're going to get to the end of the story. We're going to start again. We've got a fresh chance. In the blessings, this is source 9, just before we say the Shema, there's the first blessing straight after Yishtabach and Kadesh. There's a bracha, it's called Yotzeh Or, he who forms light. And we say, Uvetuvo Machadesh B'chol Yom Tamid Ma'aseh Bereshis. In his goodness, God renews daily the work of creation. Your body renews itself, your skin sheds every 7 days, okay? And so we have this opportunity. If someone's nail break, it grows again. God's given us this opportunity. As we finish one cycle, we're going to start a new cycle. And we have to use that as an opportunity to invigorate ourselves and to renew ourselves and to be excited. And on Monday and Tuesday night, we're going to say Shehechiyanu, bracha, Shehechiyanu, v'kiyimanu, v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. We don't have any specific mitzvah. It's not like we've got the lulav. It's not like we've got the matzah. It's not like we've got any specific mitzvah. We're making the Shehechiyanu bracha on the Torah itself. But we got the Torah over 3,000 years ago. It's not new, but we are supposed to bring within ourselves the excitement. We have to bring with ourselves new vitality, like the moon, waxes and wanes. We've got to think to ourselves, even if we've let it slip a little bit, here's our opportunity. Come back to shul, unite with Jews around the world. Some people can read lots, some people know lots, but it doesn't matter. We dance together with our feet, not our brains. We keep the Torah scroll closed. Doesn't matter if you can read or if you're a Torah scholar, we're all in this together and we dance in a circle. There's no beginning and there's no end. Everyone can take part. We finish Devarim, there's no end, really there's no end because we start straight away with Bereshis. So I hope that you'll all try this year. So maybe I'll get a plug for Rabbi Zavid. I hope that you'll all this year try and make an effort to join in. You are already all the committed people. I'm talking to all committed people. Bring a friend. Each person try and bring a friend. Tell them, this is the time. This is our time. We're all in it together. Anyone, whoever you were, whatever you were doing before, think about the metaphor of the moon. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Shabbos. And I hope you get inspired for the new year.
Zakubor, thank you so much. Wow, so uplifting. Amazing. Let me just take you off the screen.
Yeah.
So Chava, that was brilliant. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Lots to think about. I always think with the round colours. I mean, the story that always goes